A good writer must be able to tell a good story. I know this sounds a little obvious, but there are writers who believe they can't tell a good story but can still write one. I really shouldn't need to say this, but to be a good writer, you must first be able to tell a good story. Believe it or not, I've actually heard writers say that they don't have it in them to talk a good story and can only create a good story when they are alone in front of their computer. Are you kidding? What do you think writing is? It's storytelling. A writer is a storyteller. How can you possibly think that you can write a story if you lack the ability to tell one? Here's a little story. A group of 7 men were sitting around a table having a conversation. Two of the men in the group, one named Simon and the other named Rupert, had once again taken over the conversation with their inability to stop talking long enough to allow the other men to contribute to the conversation. One of the 5 men who hadn't had a chance to voice his opinion all evening finally spoke up and said to Simon and Rupert, "You both talk so much. I'd bet a year's wages that neither of you could refrain from speaking for an entire month." The 2 men, eager to prove the other wrong, took the challenge and vowed not to be the first to speak. Although Simon didn't really need the money, he enjoyed beating Rupert at whatever challenge they took on. Rupert, on the other hand, was in dire need of money but quite worried because in all of his life he was never able to hold his tongue for more than a day. The first week passed without either of them uttering a word, but then halfway through the second week, Simon couldn't help himself and accidentally uttered the word "ouch" after striking his knee on the side of a table. Then the 6 men watched and waited to see if Rupert could last for the rest of the month. On the third week, and he still hadn't uttered a single word, the others were surprised at his resolve. Then, on the final day of the final week, Rupert had made it to the end. But he still wouldn't talk. "You can stop showing off now, Rupert," said Simon. "You've won. I admit you are the better man." But still, he would not speak. Then, as the 6 men continued standing in front of Rupert, Simon asked him why he refused to speak even after the bet had been won. Today, I'll talk about how telling a story is synonymous with writing one. And at the end, I'll let you know why Rupert wouldn't answer. Sitting in front of your computer and pounding away at the keyboard as you create your novel is another way of telling a story. Now, I'm not talking about reading a book to a child in a theatrical fashion. I'm talking about drawing from your mind an interesting tale which you then verbally share with others. When you sit down and begin writing, although you might be alone in that room with your computer, you are still storytelling. Oh, sure, you might not say the words out loud, but before you type those words into your computer, you first have to tell them to yourself. This action is so quick and fluid that you might not realize it, but it's actually impossible to write a story without telling it to yourself first. Okay, time for another of my little examples. A room filled with about 20 published authors from all aspects of writing had gathered for their annual conference. They had each taken turns telling their own story until they had become bored and uninterested with what each had to contribute. It was around that time that the cleaning lady who had been assigned to the room had also listened to each of their stories, finally spoke up. "The problem with you gentlemen is you care more about impressing each other than you do about telling a good story. Can you do better?" asked one of the authors. I will tell you a story, and you may judge for yourself. She then put down her duster and stepped in front of the room. When I was just a young girl, I lived in a small community with my father, my mother, and my twin sister. Although the community in which we lived was very poor, my family lived comparatively well. We didn't have much money, but unlike most, we always had food. We didn't have electricity, but unlike most, we had a house with a strong roof and four good walls. In that community, my family was considered almost royalty. My father had no son to continue the family name, so when both my parents died at an early age, it was left to me and my sister to fend for ourselves. We had become quite the warriors and well revered. Although, as twins, we were identical in our physical features, we were quite different in our attitudes and convictions. For our inheritance, we each received the equivalent of $100 for a dowry and ownership of the house to whichever of us married first. My sister had always cherished the idea of having a husband, so wasted little time in making her intentions known to the son of the wealthiest man in our community. But the man wouldn't allow his son to marry any woman who didn't come with at least a $200 dowry. My sister begged me for days to give her my inheritance, and she promised in return to allow me to continue living in the house. I eventually accepted, but her intended refused to live in a house with two identical women. That night, I woke to my sister standing over me with a knife, about to do away with me. We fought, and somehow I was able to take away the knife, but not before she had plunged it deep into my shoulder. Gasps were heard throughout the room while the entire group of authors remained fixated on the cleaning woman as she exposed her shoulder to them, revealing a scar. After seeing the look in my sister's eyes, I realized that we could never again live under the same roof without it resulting in one of our deaths. Bloody and crying, I grabbed a few of my belongings and left my family home, never to return. My sister later married the man's son, and he moved into the house with her. And what did you do? Asked one of the authors. I moved around for the next few years, looking for whatever work I could find until I could afford passage as a stowaway on a fishing boat and made my way here. Did you ever see your sister again? Asked another author. No, but I have been told that she is happy and she has everything that she has ever wanted. Are you still envious of her? Asked another author. I was never envious of my sister. In fact, I have done better than she. I have a quiet little one-bedroom apartment with running water and electricity. I even have a little TV, which I've grown accustomed watching many different shows. And I have this cleaning job where I get to meet new and important people, such as yourselves, on a regular basis. I could never have had all of this back in my community. At that moment, the authors began talking quietly to each other. Then one stood up. We have unanimously decided that your story has won this year's prize for the story of the year, and with it, a check for $50,000. They all stood up and applauded her, and they were still applauding when she accepted the check, waved thank you, and walked out of the room. In the hallway, while she was putting away her cleaning trolley, a reporter approached her. Your story is amazing. If you don't mind, I would like to do a full story on you for my magazine. The cleaning woman smiled and said, It was just a story, young man. The reporter looked shocked. But it seemed so real. What about your scar you showed us? And what about what your father did for you? Well, the scar I got the first year I started working here. A knife dropped out of this very closet and cut into my shoulder. And as for my father, the only thing he ever did was to teach me and my older brother to always tell a good story. His favorite saying was, if stories are what put food on your table, then those stories become your tools of the trade. So everything you said was a lie? Said the reporter. The woman smiled again. They asked me to tell them a story, and so that's just what I did. She then walked away. You see, it doesn't matter who you are and at what stage you are in your life, everyone can tell a story. When a child lies, that child's parents say, stop telling stories. No one ever said a story had to be truthful. In fact, practically every story is a form of a lie. Think about it. What are the three biggest lies that people tell on a regular basis? Number one, when asked, how are you? We answer, I'm fine. Even if our world is upside down, we opt for the answer that won't provide a reason to answer more questions. Number two, when feeling affection for another, we say, I love you. Most of the time, that's a lie. Now, I'm not saying people don't love one another, but saying I love you has become so commonplace that people say it without giving it much thought. And third, I didn't do anything wrong. This encompasses a broader spectrum of lies. Billy, did you take a cookie from the cookie jar? No, Mummy, I didn't do it. Daniel, I saw you cheating on me with that other woman. It wasn't me. Mr. Douglas, you have been found guilty of grand larceny. How do you plead? Your Honor, I didn't do anything. I'm innocent. Telling lies, telling stories, it all amounts to the same thing. We are all good at storytelling, which means, contrary to what I said at the beginning of this video, every writer can tell a good story. Yet, as much as they may think they can, not every good storyteller has the ability to sit down and write a good novel. And now, here is the ending to the story I call By Any Means Necessary. Where I left off, Rupert was standing in front of the 6 men in silence. Then Rupert, after looking at each of the men, took a deep breath and opened his mouth. The men gasped aloud when they realized what Rupert had done to win the bet. Knowing it was impossible to go so long without speaking, on the first day of the contest, he had cut out his own tongue. Thanks for watching, and if you found anything that I said beneficial to you in any way, hit that subscribe button because you never know. My next video might just be helpful too.